likely one of her daughters, a woman whose name isn't even mentioned in the Bible. Adam and Eve's daughters, these mysterious women, absent from most Sunday school lessons, played a crucial role in the survival and growth of the human race. Who were they? How many existed? And why has their story remained untold for so long? Let's uncover the untold story of Adam and Eve's daughters. Let's start with what we know from the Bible itself. Genesis chapter 5 verses 4 to 5 tells us that after Seth was born, Adam lived for 800 more years and had other sons and daughters. In total, Adam lived 930 years. This passage clearly indicates that Adam and Eve had multiple daughters, even if they're not named in the biblical text. This lack of attention given to these women in scripture likely reflects the patriarchal nature of ancient societies, where male lineages were often given more prominence. However, these unnamed daughters were far from insignificant. While the Bible doesn't provide names for Adam and Eve's daughters, other ancient texts do. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text, offers some intriguing details about these mysterious women. According to Jubilees, the first daughter of Adam and Eve was named Avon. A Phoenician Hebrew, her name means potency or vice. Interestingly, Jubilees claims that Avon became Cain's wife. Yeah, you heard that right. His sister became his wife. This might sound shocking to us today, but in those early days of humanity, such unions were necessary for the continuation of the human race. Avon and Cave had a son named Enoch. This aligns with Genesis chapter 4 verse 17, which mentions that Cain built a city and named it after his son Enoch. In some other ancient texts, like the Cave of Treasures, Avon is referred to as Kelima. These varying traditions highlight the rich tapestry of ancient beliefs surrounding these early biblical figures. The Book of Jubilees also tells us about Adam and Eve's second daughter, Azurah. According to this text, Azurah became the wife of Seth, Adam and Eve's third son. Seth, whose name means compensation or substitution, was born after Abel's death and was seen as a righteous replacement for his murdered brother. Jubilees provides an interesting detail, claiming that Azurah was initially Abel's wife before his death. After Seth came of age, he married the widowed Azurah. The union of Seth and Azurah is significant in biblical history. Their lineage leads directly to Noah, a key figure in the flood story and the survival of humanity. Azurah, as Seth's wife, played a crucial role in this important genealogical line. The Book of Jubilees even provides specific timing for Azurah's life, stating that she was born in the 6th week of the 4th Jubilee and married Seth in the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee. Azurah and Seth had a son named Enos, who is an important figure in his own right. Genesis chapter 5 verses 6 to 11 provides his genealogy, and he's known for his devotion to God. In fact, Genesis chapter 4 verse 26 states that during Enos' time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. This suggests that Enos played a significant role in promoting worship and devotion to God, a legacy that likely began with his parents, Seth and Azurah. Now, you might be wondering just how many children Adam and Eve actually had. While the exact number isn't given in the Bible, considering Adam's 930-year lifespan, it's likely they had hundreds of children. Ancient tradition suggests that Eve was incredibly fertile, perhaps the most fertile woman in human history. To put this into perspective, the Guinness World Record for the most children born to one woman is held by Valentina Vassiliev, who had 69 children in the 18th century. Now, imagine how many children Eve could have had over 900 years. These numerous offspring of Adam and Eve likely contributed significantly to human diversity. According to some traditions, Adam and Eve were originally of mixed race, which contributed to the ethnic diversity of their children. This idea aligns interestingly with modern genetic studies of mitochondrial DNA, which suggest all humans share a common female ancestor, often called mitochondrial Eve. The daughters of Adam and Eve weren't just passive bystanders in early human history. They were essential to the growth and development of early human society. Without these women, the human race couldn't have continued. They were the mothers of subsequent generations, passing on not just genes, but also knowledge, traditions, and skills. While we can't know for certain, it's likely that Adam and Eve's daughters played crucial roles in early human society. They might have been the first to develop skills like weaving, pottery, or early forms of agriculture. They would have been responsible for childcare and passing on oral traditions to the next generation. Eve, as the first woman, would have had to figure out many things for the first time, on how to care for infants, how to prepare food, how to create clothing. She would have passed these skills on to her daughters, who in turn would have taught their own children. Let's take a moment to imagine the lives of these early women. They lived in a world that was still new, where everything was just being discovered for the first time. They faced challenges we can hardly imagine: wild animals, harsh weather, a constant search for food. Yet they persevered, raised families, and helped build the foundations of human civilization. The daughters of Adam and Eve may have also played a role in the development of early religious practices. As mothers and teachers, they would have been instrumental in passing on these early religious practices to their children. The fertility of Eve and her daughters is a fascinating topic to consider. The Bible tells us that God commanded Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. Eve, as the first woman, seems to have taken this command to heart. If Eve lived for hundreds of years and remained fertile throughout much of that time, she could have easily had hundreds of children, and each of her daughters would likely have been similarly fertile. This high fertility rate, combined with long lifespans mentioned in Genesis, would have led to rapid population growth in those early generations. By the time of Noah's flood, several generations later, the Earth could have been home to a sizable human population. One aspect of these early generations that might make modern readers uncomfortable is the practice of sibling marriages. Now, in those early days of humanity, such unions were essential for the continuation of the human race. There simply weren't other options available. It's important to remember that genetic diversity was not yet an issue in these first generations from Adam and Eve. However, as the human population grew and diversified, this practice would have naturally phased out. As human society developed, the roles of women evolved. In the earliest generations, women like Evan and Azura seem to have primarily been defined by their roles as wives and mothers. However, as we progress through biblical history, we see women taking on a variety of roles: prophetesses, judges, queens, and more. By considering the roles and experiences of Adam and Eve's daughters, we gain a more complete picture of early human society. We are reminded that women have always been essential to human survival and progress, even when their stories aren't front and center in historical accounts. These women were more than just wives and mothers. They were the first teachers, the first nurses, the first to develop many of the skills necessary for human survival. They passed on language, traditions, and knowledge to each new generation. As the first human society developed, Adam and Eve's daughters would have been pioneers in many areas. They likely played a crucial role in the development of language, helping to expand vocabulary and refine communication as they taught their children to speak. They may have been the first to experiment with different types of foods, discovering which plants were edible and how to prepare them. This knowledge would have been vital for survival and would have been passed down through generations. These women might have also been the first to develop early forms of medicine. As mothers caring for their children, they would have had to find ways to treat injuries and illnesses. Over time, they would have built up a wealth of knowledge about which plants had healing properties and how to use them. This early medical knowledge would have been invaluable to growing human communities. The daughters of Adam and Eve might also have been instrumental in developing early forms of art and music. As they cared for their children, they might have sung lullabies or told stories, laying the foundations for human culture. They might have decorated their living spaces or adorned themselves, beginning the long human tradition of artistic expression. Another interesting aspect to consider is the social structure these women helped to create. As families grew and expanded, how did they organize themselves? The Book of Jubilees provides some interesting details about the family structures of these early generations. It mentions that Enos, son of Seth and Azura, married his own sister Noam. This continues the pattern of sibling marriages we see with Cain and Evan and Seth and Azura. The text goes on to describe the descendants of these unions, painting a picture of rapidly growing family lines. One thing that becomes clear when studying these ancient texts is the importance placed on genealogy. The carefully recorded family lines suggest that these early humans saw great significance in their familial connections. The daughters of Adam and Eve, as the matriarchs of these lineages, would have played a crucial role in maintaining and passing on this genealogical knowledge. It's also worth considering the spiritual legacy of these women. While much of the biblical narrative focuses on the main line leading to important figures like Noah and eventually Jesus, we shouldn't overlook the role women played in shaping the spiritual landscape of early humanity. The daughters of Adam and Eve would have been among the first humans to grapple with questions of existence, purpose, and the divine. Their thoughts and beliefs would have influenced their children and grandchildren, helping to shape the religious and philosophical foundations of early human society. The story of Adam and Eve's daughters also raises interesting questions about the nature of human relationships in those early days. How did the first siblings relate to each other? How did they handle conflicts, share resources, and support each other? The biblical account of Cain and Abel suggests that sibling rivalry was present from the very beginning of human history. These family dynamics would have set the pattern for all future human relationships. The resilience and adaptability of these women is truly remarkable. They had no precedent to follow, no older generation to learn from. Everything they did, they were doing for the first time in human history. They were the first to experience childbirth, the first to nurse a baby, the first to watch a child take its first steps. Each new experience would have been both wonderful and terrifying as they navigated the uncharted waters of human existence. One aspect of their lives that's particularly fascinating to consider is their relationship with the natural world. As the first humans to inhabit the earth, Adam and Eve and their children would have had a unique connection to their environment. The daughters of Adam and Eve would have been intimately familiar with the plants and animals around them, learning through observation and experience which were beneficial and which were dangerous. This deep knowledge of nature would have been essential for survival and would have been carefully passed down to future generations. The longevity attributed to these early humans in the biblical account is another intriguing aspect to consider. If Adam lived for 930 years, and similar lifespans are mentioned for other early patriarchs, we can assume that the daughters of Adam and Eve also lived for many centuries. Did they continue to have children throughout their long lives? The impact of such long lifespans on family dynamics and social structures must have been significant. If you made it all the way to this part in the video, you may qualify for our membership, so you might want to